Ask any non-NASCAR fan what the Daytona 500 is all about, and you probably get one of two answers: that they just go around and around and around in a circle for 3 hours, with absolutely no skill involved whatsoever, in the most boring display of auto racing ever devised. And the other lot of people? Well, they'd probably say that it's all about this.
Oh no! Almirola! Oh, the 24's on his side.
Locked up the track for everybody behind him. Rusty Wallace, 20 feet in the air.
Yeah, the stereotypes surrounding NASCAR still exist today. A bunch of rednecks driving in circles for ages with Major X being the only source of entertainment. But I mean, is that even the case? I mean, surely there's more to it than that, right? Well, we're a couple days out from the Great American Race happening, and I thought, yeah, sure, why not? I'm gonna try and convince the people that could be bothered clicking on this video why the Daytona 500 is worth a damn. And let's start that shit off with a history lesson from a guy who knows his stuff.
The Daytona 500 can actually trace its origins all the way back to 1936, when the first Daytona Beach race was held. The layout of the course was simple: 2 miles on the 2-lane paved Highway A1A, a quick U-turn on the hard-packed sand surface of Daytona Beach, 2 miles up the beach, and then another U-turn to do it all over again. The composition of the sand in this area of Florida is unique in that it makes a surface almost as hard as concrete, and your car won't sink into it. Before this race, it had been the site of numerous land speed records. That first race in 1936 was held by the city of Daytona Beach and ended up being a complete disaster. By the time organizers arrived at the track that morning, thousands of people had camped out the night before and it was impossible to sell them tickets. The race then ran over its allotted time and had to be called off early due to the tide rolling in. The city ended up losing tens of thousands of dollars on this event, and that's before adjusting it for inflation. However, one competitor in that race thought he could do better, a guy by the name of Bill France. France held a race on the same course the next year and suffered minimal losses. The next time he held a race, he broke even, and on his third attempt, he netted some serious cheddar. And that was it. The Daytona Beach race was now a mainstay of American racing. They usually race 3 times per year, once on Labor Day, once more on July 4th weekend, and to kick off the year, one time in February, a tradition that still continues today. While racing at Daytona was halted during World War II, it made a big comeback after the war, when GIs found themselves with nothing to do but soup up dirt cheap cars and race them for money and glory. And honestly, after you've saved the world from fascists and imperialists on one side of the world or the other, there's really nothing left for you to do anymore to get your rocks off. But this gave veterans an outlet. By 1948, Bill France wanted to unify the many disparate stock car racing bodies out there and bring them all under one umbrella. He wanted a National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, and in February of that year, he got what he wanted. When NASCAR first incorporated in 1948, it was Red Byron, a World War II vet, who took home the trophy out there on the beach in the first ever NASCAR modified race. And in 1949, when the strictly stock division, now the NASCAR Cup Series, started up, Byron became the first ever champion. Throughout the 40s and the 50s, the sands of Daytona became a proving ground for NASCAR's first batch of superstars. Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, Junior Johnson, and Marshall Teague, among many, many others, cut their teeth out here and won fame and fortune during NASCAR's primordial years. But by 1958, Bill France, the head of NASCAR, wanted something more. He had seen the Southern 500 over in Darlington, South Carolina become a crown jewel event, and wanted Daytona to be even bigger and better. He envisioned a track where drivers would never have to let off the throttle, and after buying some marshy land a few miles inland, he set off to build Daytona International Speedway, a 2.5-mile speedway with an unbelievable 31-degree embankment. He settled with 31 degrees because his engineering crew simply couldn't stack the dirt any higher than that. The dirt for the banking had been taken from the infield, and the large trough left over was quickly filled with water and dubbed Lake Lloyd, in honor of Saxton Lloyd, a local car dealership owner who had given France his first job down in Florida. The first race was held in 1959, and fans came from all over the country to see this oddity, and the show didn't disappoint one bit. It was far and away the fastest track on the schedule, and after an unforgettable 3-wide photo finish where fan favorite Lee Petty prevailed, the race was set in stone forever as the ultimate NASCAR race.
And in the years that followed, history was still being made, because that's how history works. I'm bad at scripting, aren't I? Through the 60s and 70s, we saw victors like Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt, and Richard Petty. Massive names in racing. Petty won the damn thing what seemed to be 8 million times, including the 1979 iteration where, for the first time ever, it was broadcast live on national television. The nation tuned in to watch Donnie Allison and Carl Yarborough battling for the lead at the end. Naturally, Allison didn't want to let him by, and Yarborough effectively said, well, yous, I'm coming through whether you like it or not. And definitely in that accent. The laws of physics though gave both them the middle finger and threw them into the infield. Meanwhile, Petty romped on home to win, whilst Allison and Yarborough had a mean-ass fight by their wrecks, and thus started the tradition of trackside boxing matches which the public just oh so loves. I mean, hey, what's not to love about a driver trying to punch someone wearing a helmet? You can hear their hand braking from a mile away. Petty would win the Daytona 500 again a couple years later, making it 7 victories overall, a record he still holds, along with his 200 overall cup victories which just completely dwarfs everything else. Although, if there was one driver that you would think would have that record, but didn't, it was the man in black, the Intimidator, Dale Earnhardt. A name that just about transcends NASCAR in a way. The famous number 3 and the guy who donned it kinda summed up what racing was. Although sometimes he liked to piss off people. Can't criticize though, I literally piss off people for a living. He achieved everything but the Daytona 500. The dude couldn't buy luck there until 1998 where, after 20 years of trying, after 20 years of frustration, he finally went to victory lane in the Daytona 500. And yet, just 3 years later, he would lose his life in the very same race. Coming off a turn 4 on the final lap, he crashed into the outside wall. A few hours later, he was announced dead. What resulted from the crash was the mandating of the Hans device, safer barriers, and other safety-focused innovations, including the car of tomorrow. In the years since 2001, there has not been another fatality in the 500. There have, however, been heaps of interesting moments, I guess. Whether it be Juan Pablo Montoya lighting the track on fire after getting a little bit too friendly with a jet dryer, several first-time Cup winners in out-of-nowhere wins, Danica Patrick grabbing the pole position in 2013, and Dale son Dale Jr. going on to win the 500 in 2004 and again in 2014. And this Sunday, you bet your ass more history will be made. Now, this video is kind of targeting non-fans, I suppose. Not in the loop with NASCAR in 2022, don't know who to cheer or who the informed drivers are. Take it away, Darian.
2022 marks NASCAR's 74th season and the 51st in the modern era. For the past few decades, the season opening race has always been the Daytona 500. But while the sport has had changes year by year, this is without a doubt the biggest change in all of NASCAR's history. Brand new cars, brand new number placements, new drivers coming into the Cup Series, as well as a single lug nut. And of course, let's not forget NASCAR beefing up its penalty system. But one of the few things that has remained the same is the Daytona 500 opening up the season. Let's go over some of the favorites. First off, by far the biggest favorite entering this year's Daytona 500 is Denny Hamlin. He's won the Great American Race 3 times in 2016, 2019, and 2020. While he's still looking for his first championship, the next guy I'm going to mention already has one. Chase Elliott is NASCAR's golden boy, the most popular driver in all of NASCAR. He won the Cup Series championship in 2020, but is still looking for his first Daytona 500 victory. You can also throw his Hendrick Motorsports teammates Alex Bowman and William Byron in the mix as well. As for defending Cup Series champion Kyle Larson, however, let's just say his track record on the super speedways is much to be desired. Team Penske's obviously going to bring their muscle in, with both Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano showing promise on super speedways. And finally, some hungry veterans that are established champions in the sport but are looking to win their first Daytona 500 to solidify their career are these veterans in Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, and Kyle Busch. This race is going to be a wild one. 200 laps on a 2.5 mile super speedway is gonna lead to some chaos every now and then. So by the time we reach the final laps, some of these favorites might not even be a factor. So look out for some underdog drivers in Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, and of course, the defending Daytona 500 champion, Michael McDowell. A huge shout out to Josh for letting me on the video, really appreciate it, and make sure to tune in to the 64th running of the Daytona 500.
Okay, that's cool, but why watch the Daytona 500? After all, it's just dudes going round and round in circles with no skill involved, right? I mean, yeah, there ain't as much technique to driving restrictor plate tracks as there are to other tracks on the calendar, at least when you're running around out there on your own. But it does come with its own challenges. In the race, the objective is to stay with the leaders, lose the draft, and you're gonna fall back worse than... You know what, even with my history and America's, even I won't go there. But you get the idea. When you're with the leading bunch, you could try vying for the lead, but again, lose the momentum and you could be thrown out of contention. You have to time your moves right, minimize mistakes, stay out of trouble, have a half decent car underneath you, and ultimately, hope that your luck ain't crap on the day. It's essentially one big chess match with a massive ass track as a board and 43 cars as pawns yearning to be taken out. Yeah, we've arrived at that point. After all, it is a staple of this damn sport. The big one.
Oh no! Almirola! Oh, the 24's on his side.
Once the car breaks loose in an oval, you can kiss your sorry ass goodbye. You'd have an easier time recovering Seth Binns' career than that car, and with heaps of other cars around you screaming along at 200 miles an hour, the results are inevitable. Happily though, the days of cars flying over the barriers and back onto the beach are behind us. But still, does get smashed from time to time. So for you knuckle dragging, mouth breathing, lowest common denominator fans out there, that part of the sport is still out there for you guys to get giddy over. Overall though, on the surface, I know how this race may seem to a lot of non-NASCAR fans, but for a lot of us F1 fans that contend with 23 races with the same two two guys win every race, it is a nice change to see multiple lead changes every lap, finishes that come down to the thousandths of a second. And honestly, you don't really know who's going to win the race. And that's the beauty of it, really. So yeah, the Daytona 500, the great American race. Give it a watch. Please, otherwise this video is pointless.